Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
What up, Chiefs fans? Welcome to 10 Things. I am BJ Kissel. This is a special episode since this is more of an in-season show for anybody who's been listening, but we do appreciate you for spending part of your day with us here at KC Sports Network. I'm going to be honest, this is the show I didn't really want to have to record, but with the discourse being what it is, I had a few things that I wanted to say regarding it. I don't really comment a lot on social media anymore, don't really get into it there. And so I'm going to share a few thoughts on some of the main topics that are going on right now and share my 2 cents. People might disagree with me. That's okay. Invite civil discourse and disagreement, but that's not what's been happening on social media amongst Chiefs fans, obviously Eagles fans, even Bills, Bengals, Ravens fans, everybody getting into it. And it's just a sad state of affairs with what's happened. I'm going to keep it in our lane and talk about sports discourse, although I know and putting out on social media that just like sports discourse has never been worse. Put that out on social media, and a lot of people tell me that it's not just within sports, but we're going to stick to our lane here because we talk about sports here. So, but again, the discourse has just gotten really embarrassing. And I feel like the old man telling everyone just to slow down and that kind of thing. And I'm probably going to be old man shouts at cloud, but I am an old man at this point compared to the people I think that I'm interacting with on social media for the most part. But let's get into the 10 things that stood out. And we do have a special interview after the first break with Brian Morris. He's the president of LeaderCast, phenomenal organization. It's been based down in Atlanta, doing some phenomenal things down there with business leaders and CEOs, and just I think everybody can take something away from this group. I caught my eye on LinkedIn, saw a promotion for it, and they have Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas. Obviously, Bob Kendrick, our guy here in Kansas City, is going to speak at this event. John Gordon, the famed author, I had read his book, The Energy Bus, several years ago. Just caught my attention. Dominique Dawes, an Olympian, is going to be there. And Brian Morris, who I'm going to be speaking with, who's a K-State guy. Our paths had kind of crossed before, so it made me familiar when I saw the post, but was interested. It reached out, and he wanted to come on and talk a little bit about the event that's coming up in April. So we'll have that after the first break. But I want to get into the 10 things that are just kind of standing out to me right now that I've seen on social and just following that performance in the Super Bowl that nobody really expected outside of Eagles fans and Chiefs fans. It's always the same thing, that they felt as strongly that there was a chance it was going to be in the Chiefs side going the other way. Obviously that did not happen. Eagles just went out there and they had a better day. They just kicked their tails in, and sometimes that happens. But just the large statements coming from social media, some from national media, a lot of people just patting themselves on the back for trying to be right, saying that the Chiefs were not good enough, tumbling, all that stuff. And then when they do tumble into the Super Bowl after winning the AFC again, people are just waiting to say, I told you so, despite the fact that it's in the Super Bowl. But again, social media, there's no place for a nuanced discussion anymore. It's all hyperbole. It's all completely disingenuous, or it's just reductionary. We try to make things that are very difficult, have a lot of layers to them, and we try to oversimplify them in order to fit a narrative, order a point that has to be made in 280 characters or less. And it just doesn't make sense. Again, this is me being old man, and I appreciate nuanced discussions. And I think going back to, when I started doing media and started covering the Chiefs, 16 years ago on Arrowhead Pride, that back then it was a community full of people that disagreed, but it was more civil disagreement, kind of what you want and what social media maybe started off as, but then quickly divulged into whatever it's become now. But the discourse going into the Super Bowl between the refs was so disingenuous and really just not respecting and almost discrediting the Chiefs' opportunity to do something that had never been done in NFL history with a three-peat. It was frustrating as a football fan, obviously biased being a Chiefs fan, but when I was in New Orleans for a couple of days down there with Tucker and Haley, as they were doing great work running around, and I was doing my best to feel better and just get some content. The one thing that took away is that there was so much disrespect or just being tired of the Chiefs, whatever you want to call it, I came to realize that I don't think there'll be a three-peat champion in any sport or any major sport, where that team is not universally hated by the other 31 teams or 29 teams, whatever it is. At that point, you just can't have that level of consistent success for long enough without, questionable calls going their way, despite the fact that they overcame them and still made plays after. Won't go down that road now, but I don't think a team can have that level of success and have those fans not be exhausting. And most of it is what we've seen from Chiefs fans. We'll get into that a little bit later. Not that there's a bunch of Saints on the Chiefs side too that have been the reason why a lot of people are responding, and everybody seems to be responding to the lowest common denominator and the most like outlandish things that are said. And that's another discussion I could spend a lot of time talking about, media coverage and all of that. But the one thing I'll say, number two, and I thought about this before because it's the anniversary of passing away, was just a couple weeks ago, but we miss Therese Paylor. We missed somebody that had the ability to read between the lines and tell us what was actually going on, not necessarily just what's fed to us through the media, through press conferences, and we'll get into that. But even the things said at press conference are being completely torn apart and dissected in a way that I don't think they were meant. I could be wrong, but let me give my 2 cents on the Joe Blameyer quotes and some of the other stuff. But in general, it's the one thing above just being a phenomenal human being and a lot of people's friend, myself included, with Therese, is he had an ability to understand the players, coaches, have those relationships within the organization, outside the organization, to be able to, like I said, read between the lines and tell us what's going on without what's happening now, which is just a bunch of people trying to defend quotes and context, when most of the time it was only one person who was there, wrote the story, put it out there, and then it's read. And sometimes things that are said versus things that are read look and sound completely different. And I just don't like what this is leading to and where it's ultimately heading. And I'll get into that in a second. But again, I miss the nuanced discussion. So I don't really comment a whole lot on social media anymore. I'll have a conversation with people in person. But there's just not a platform for nuanced discussions. We're trying to build a KC Center. We'll talk about that later, but that's a different thing. And that is not the answer to anything in any way. It's just our little small answer in our little corner of this space. But as it relates to Joe Blameyer, let's get into this. Kalen Collar, if I said that right, was the senior writer at ESPN who had the quote from Coach Blameyer. It said, "You feel the burden as a coach as you're putting a game plan together to not waste his abilities." His being is about coaching Patrick Mahomes and coaching a player that's at that level. Said to not go through a season where you don't give him the opportunity, to not screw it up as a coaching staff. So rather than feeling like this unbridled excitement that we could do anything, again, in context of having such a great player, it's actually more like a terror. Like, we cannot be the reason that we screwed this guy up or this team up. That was said before the game. And a lot of people have jumped on that quote thinking that Joe Blameyer is terrified to coach Patrick Mahomes. Whereas, again, this is my 2 cents of it. I could be wrong. You could completely disagree with how I take this. I take it as a coach being asked in context of how excited are you to get to work with such a great player? It must be like heaven. And he's giving the other side of it. Yeah, but there's a lot of pressure to get it right. It would be like coaching Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson, although Phil Jackson and pressure, different guys, why they fit together so well, or Kobe, same kind of just different dudes. Patrick Mahomes in that light. And to put all of the onus now on Joe Blameyer, and just Google Joe Blameyer and you will get multiple articles. The first things that will show up are saying that he should not have a job anymore. And get to that in a sec. But again, so Matt Verderam, obviously Sports Illustrated, from That Football Show here on KC Sports Network, records weekly show with Tucker Franklin. He posted on X in response to this article from Kalen Collar saying that I've said all year the Chiefs offense looks like they're terrified. It turns out they're actually terrified. Now, to zinger on a quote using the word terrified in equivalence to the Chiefs offense not being as explosive. Now, offensive line, injuries to Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, there is more context to this. And that's called Matt out and texting with Matt. We're all on the same page in some way, but I actually agree more in this particular instance with Kansas City star Sam McDowell, who responded to that post saying this is a false equivalence. Blameyer is referring to the gravity of coaching an all-time great from a big picture standpoint. You've equated it to literally playing a scared on a play-to-play basis, the smallest of pictures. Also, he doesn't call plays, two different things. I'll agree with Sam. And pretty much any time anyone wants to criticize, same thing with Matt Nagy, where people are criticizing Matt Nagy because of what the offense has become. The offense is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. There's a problem with the offense. It starts with Andy Reid, and he would be the first person to tell you that. He tells you all the time. It's the mea culpa that annoys people, but it's true. It runs through Coach Reid. And so from an outsider perspective, to try and place blame on a coach who you don't even know the responsibilities of that coach, neither do I. I worked there 6 years. I've been around Coach Blameyer. Not even sure I've ever had a conversation with him. So there's no context for me in that kind of way. I am looking at these quotes the same way that you are, and the same way that everyone that was writing articles about how a guy should lose his job based on a quote from context that they weren't there for and only read in the story. Again, you Google Joe Blameyer's name, those quotes come up. Forever is how that's going to be. Now, I read an article on, it was called KC Kingdom, and about these comments. And on their face, the comments aren't inherently a problem. It's wise for Blameyer to realize the gravity of the situation, the importance of effectively coaching Mahomes. That said, it felt for 2 years now that the offense was being coach scared. Blameyer has been the passing game coordinator for 2 years, in the same 2 years that Matt Nagy has been the offensive coordinator. Perhaps it's merely explainable coincidence that those 2 seasons coincided with 2 of Mahomes' worst years. Maybe there's a deeper conclusion to draw. Goes on to say, however, the warning signs about their respective decision-making are obvious. How is their decision-making process obvious based on one quote out of context from a coach you didn't talk to that you aggregated a story from? Again, these are articles being written, shared, and I found one on heavy.com that was also saying that he should be fired based on one comment. And that article, according to the article, had like 70,000 views. 70,000 people read an article from someone they don't know, having no idea how much context there actually was, talking about how a man should lose his job because he used the word terrified. I think the onus of being able to look into those things and think a little more critically before we put that kind of content out there should happen. It's not the world that we live in. It's not media content. Again, 70,000 people clicked on that content, just like the Facebook posts I see of Tom Brady admitting to the NFL that the Chiefs were cheating and that he called out Travis Kelce and all the dumbest stuff that is not real. Any normal person knows not real, but the content's created because people can monetize the virality of it. And it's the way that Facebook bonus program works. It's once you understand it, you understand why things are done the way that they are, but can't put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste container, whatever that saying is that I say to my kids all the time about this stuff. Not this stuff, but other stuff. Like once it's out there, you can't put it back. And when it comes to quotes, you can't take that quote back. And what this does, and granted, I'm defending, I could be wrong. It's all saying I could be wrong. But what did we teach Coach Blameyer or any other coach that sees what happens is to not be honest and just talk normally with the media. You have to watch every single word you say. And sure, that's part of it now. But then don't complain we get a bunch of robotic cliches from coaches and wonder why you're not getting a real answer and not finding out anything real. That's what Terez was so good at. He could cut through it and players and coaches could talk normally to him. And if one thing came out wrong or used a word like terror to be descriptive and to show the other side of it when it could have been a leading question about how exciting it is to coach such a great player, it's leading him a certain way. And he just being like, hey, hold on, and pulling back. Maybe not been the right choice of words. He's probably learned his lesson, but the rest of us are going to be the ones who suffer because we'll never hear anything normal at a press conference. Coaches learn that lesson. It's not I would say well-trained media. He didn't talk to the media as much as the coordinators, and obviously Coach Reid, who's a master at doing that and being able to say Alex Smith may have been the best, where he'd give you enough on a question that you could write your story, but really didn't give away anything. Mahomes is very good at it. But again, it sounds like I'm an old man shouting about all this content, but I just think that there's a little bit more deeper thought and respect given to content that's created than what's happening and what we've seen and what's transpired over the last couple of weeks, especially with the Joe Blameyer quote. And from this next one, there's an article from Henry McKenna from Fox Sports. Here's the quote that he wrote in his article. He said, "Before the game, a Chiefs coach told me that media members had been asking him if going to the Super Bowls ever gets old. And he bluntly told me it does. There was legit Super Bowl fatigue from this Chiefs team. It was completely clear in the first half when things escalated quickly." And we're connecting dots there. But what's the context of going to the Super Bowl? And I can say this, I've been to a few of them, a lot fewer than other people. But the Super Bowl is an absolute zoo from a media story. It's a lot of hype. It's a lot of hoopla for a week and a half for a football game. Granted, it's the biggest football game in the world, 135, 140 million people, however many people watching the game, more than that, with all the other streams and everything. But it's still a football game. If you saw how much media was going on and what the media, and we tried to show that at KCSN. Haley was doing a great job going around talking with the players. I tried to put some stuff out, just showing like what it looks like from a player coach standpoint, doing media leading into the Super Bowl. It's crazy and exhausting for those guys to get ready for their football game, one of the biggest football games of their lives and what they worked all year for. And in a lot of cases, their entire lives for the guys that were going for the first time. But after the first time, you realize how much goes into it. And it's hard if you're not there understanding like the players' schedule and the coaches' schedules. But when I heard that quote, like that was my first reaction is I'm sure all the media stuff, all the hoopla, all the stuff they have to go through leading into the Super Bowl, I'm sure that part of it does get kind of old. Not playing in the biggest game, not the football related things, not the things that these guys have been spending their entire lives preparing for. Which is playing football and scheming and the chess match and all the things that we love kind of talking about, but don't quite understand, at least not to the level that they do. They're football people doing football things. The rest of it's a business and a hype train. That part of it could get very old, and I understand. The media part of it could get very old very quickly for players and coaches, as we've seen exactly why. For me, and I'll get into this in a minute, I have a very unique perspective. And a lot of people call me a fence sitter, whatever you want to call. I try to look at things from all perspectives and understand it before I try and speak on it, or before I try, especially and lay blame or anything like that. And that part of it for me is just missing right now. And again, going back, that's what Terez was so good about. That's more than anything professionally. Other than just missing our friend, miss having that voice within Chiefs fan. We don't have that voice. Not a knock on anybody else because not everybody can do that. He was the one who could do that. I couldn't do that. We don't have that person right now. And we miss that person in moments like this where people are just arguing over context. And I don't think it's as simple as a lot of people. Like I said, it's reductionary. In a lot of cases. But again, going back to the comment from the unnamed Chiefs coach about it getting old, that was asked during a media availability, whether it's opening night. If you see the zoo that was opening night, and we saw the questions that were asked of the players and coaches, especially Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce regarding the refs and Taylor Swift and all the just crap, that would 100% get old. Not the first time, because it's exciting. You see it. These guys have done it, 5 times now? And the discourse being what it was going into this one about the refs and this just conspiracy theories and not just giving credit for them being good. And then like Taylor Swift getting booed. Like, what are we doing as a society? Like, I don't have to like her music, I don't have to agree with the stuff, but like the vitriol that people have for strangers, especially ones that reported they've just done nothing but awesome things and donating to Operation Breakthrough and all these other things. It's just so disrespectful to me that I try to do what I can. I was in New Orleans. I had one chance to ask Travis Kelce a question. I'm looking around and I see 50 cameras and the biggest platform these athletes might ever have individually for a game. Kelce's, these platforms ever with everything he does. He's going to be more successful after football. But had chance to ask him a question. I was thinking about a million different things to ask him, and I just asked him about Operation Breakthrough because it is something that he does that's very real, it's very genuine, and has made a much larger impact to the community and what he's doing than anything else that he could do. Any catch that he could make in the Super Bowl, any catch that he could not make, any play that he took off that people are highlighting. And I don't know. I just standing there, I was like, you know what? I want to ask you about something that I think is real and deserves the amount of attention that this platform provides to help people. But we'll get into Kelce here in a minute because obviously his comments and the rumors of him impending retirement are coming up. But again, going back to the Henry McKenna, when he says it does get old and everybody hops on it. And then with the Blameyer quote, it's just those two things have just set all fans off. And obviously there's disingenuous comments coming from the other side. It's frustrating. Should have done this podcast, somebody else to go back and forth with, some people probably screaming and yelling at me, and some people maybe nodding. The olds are nodding, being like, thank you for, hate saying this, so condescending, but like being the adult in the room. When you look through some of the conversations you see on social media, people going back and forth, there's no winning. You either be right or happy, and there is no being right. There's nobody's going to agree on anything. The one thing I think we could all agree on is Travis Kelce is one of the best tight ends to ever play the game, and the rumors of his impending retirement has people feeling some kind of way. The interaction that was caught on camera with Patrick Mahomes and they were mic'd up, that's something. The comments on Kelce's New Heights podcast with his brother Jason were also something. And then his contract, I think is reported having bonuses that come out mid-March. I want to say March 14th. I could be wrong on that. Somebody will tell me in the comments. There's a bonus due then, and that kind of spurs the deadline in the action. My gut says he's retiring. He has nothing left to prove. There are more reasons to believe that he'd have every reason to hang them up and be done, then he'll continue playing. But except for the most important one, and that is the fire still there? And only he knows that. And that's the biggest question, probably not the kind of thing that could be understood or answered right after that game, especially right after that performance, the way that the game played out. But again, this is a guy that will be as successful, if not more successful, just kind of building his brand and people knowing who he is and even the money that he's making after he's done with football, and what he's done for the Chiefs, the community, the people he's interacted with along the way. It can't be quantified. I've shared a few stories of things and interactions I've had with him away from mics and the camera's not on. And those are the things that I'm going to remember forever, specifically about him and what he's about and what he does to give back and just the genuine nature that he has. So I will be waiting like everybody else to see what that thought is. I personally do think he's done. I'll be happy if he's not. But it's him just figuring out how much is that fire there outside of game day to do everything to get ready to go out there and be the absolute best. I think physically, if he could do it, he could go and play like Antonio Gates and Jason Witten, where they were obviously physically not where they were earlier in the career, later on, but could still get open. Still has the nuanced ability to get open. He and Patrick Mahomes still see things the same way. It won't be the same as what we've used to. And does he want to continue doing that? We'll find out. Something he's got to figure out over the next little bit of time. But no matter what he decides, I'm going to support it and appreciate the fact that we got to see another one of the best tight ends to ever play the game here in Kansas City. We're going to take a quick break right now. And when we come back, we are going to be chatting with the president of LeaderCast, mentioned off the top of the show, but Brian Morris is going to join us right after this quick break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Welcome back to 10 Things here on KCSN. As I mentioned, we have a special guest for the next few minutes. Brian Morris, the president of LeaderCast, is going to join us, and LeaderCast is coming to Kansas City with speakers like famed author John Gordon, the Savannah Bananas visionary Jesse Cole, Olympian Dominique Dawes, and our very own Bob Kendrick from the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and many others. The LeaderCast mission is that we believe everyone has the potential to be a great leader, and great leaders change the world. We provide the impact and inspiration needed to unleash your leadership potential. Again, we are joined by the president of LeaderCast, Mr. Brian Morris. Brian, I appreciate you for joining us and helping us learn a little bit about LeaderCast and the opportunity that people within Kansas City have to go and visit it and be a part of it on April 8th.
Yeah, thanks, BJ. We're really excited for the first time in 25 years to be bringing this event to Kansas City. LeaderCast was started 25 years ago by John Maxwell. Many of you guys probably know that name if you're familiar with leadership. But now it's coming to Kansas City to the Midland Theater on April 8th. And as in sports is no different than business. So we see a lot of these speakers that come with an expertise in leadership that also have a background in sports. So for your listeners, anyone that's interested in sports, I think we'll have a great time, as well as growing their leadership abilities and hearing some cool stories from Olympic gold medalists, people like John Gordon, who has worked with, Clemson and a number of the pro teams, as well as ran the Energy Bus, which has been used by a lot of sports organizations all over the world. So we're excited to be bringing it to Kansas City.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you before that I knew of John Gordon because I read The Energy Bus, and I had read it, and I think it was either 2016 or 2017. I had learned that Andy Reid would give all of his assistant coaches a book to read after mandatory minicamp, which is always kind of middle of June, and they would get about 6 weeks off before they would all have to report to training camp up in St. Joe. He would give them all a book to read during that break. Every year, a different book. And one year I had been talking with him about some long form stuff that I was doing, and he had mentioned it and gave me a copy of the book, and I read through it. Whenever I saw John Gordon, followed him on social media, and it was phenomenal stuff. And I think everybody can take something a little bit different away from it. With the experience that you have and what LeaderCast has done, like you said, over the last 25 years, what are some of the top things that people can take away from it that and the experiences that people have had, how that's helped them, whether it's personally, professionally, in some sort of leadership form?
Yeah, probably one of the things within organizations in general that has been really interesting to find out is data has started to come out, and we're all into the era of analytics if you're a baseball person or whatever that might be. But there's a real void in leadership right now in the United States of America. In fact, 65% of Americans would rather have a new boss than a pay raise. And 75% of them state the most stressful thing of their entire life, not paying their mortgage, not raising children, not the Chiefs winning or not winning the Super Bowl, but it's their direct boss. 75%, the most stressful aspect of their entire life. So what LeaderCast does is aims to help improve leaders. And we believe that if we can help you become a better leader, if we can help those leaders in your organization become better leaders, then it trickles down into your company and helps your company be more profitable, better workforce engagement, all of those types of things. So this event is really a high impact, high energy day to really get that motivation and that inspiration from some of the best leaders in the entire world, surrounded by great leaders in Kansas City. There'll be 2,000 executives and other leaders in attendance. And so people that come to this event can just really, really be challenged, really be encouraged. But again, it's really to make change, and it is to make lasting change for your organization that allows you to be better. And if you're a self-learner, kind of like you and I are always trying to find ways to improve, it's a great opportunity to spend the day learning from some of the best.
Right. If you were to listen to the first half of this show, I'd say that every media person that's been covering the Chiefs in such a disingenuous way over the past 3 weeks, I would invite all of them to come out and learn what being a better leader and learn what being the responsibility that comes with a platform if you have to reach people, to be genuine in the work that you're doing and all of those things. And I feel like old man shouts at clouds sometimes in talking about the way the Chiefs was covered over the last 3 weeks. But I did mention to you when I saw on LinkedIn the promotion for it. Obviously, I've followed Jesse Cole and the Savannah Bananas just in doing something different and just disrupting an industry that I'd say he's kind of creating his own path in a way. And I love guys who think outside the box and do those kinds of things. And obviously John Gordon, and saw Bob Kendrick's name on there, Dominique Dawes, some of the people that you had mentioned. I was excited as someone that needs to put myself in those situations. And I love to learn how people got to where they are, how they found success, where they struggled, and figure out where I can take things from that and apply it to what I do personally, whether it's professionally with KCSN, the interactions that I have with our 30 plus hosts across their network. And so I'm excited to be there. I will be there on April 8th. With everybody listening that wants to come. But before we let you go, can you tell us what to expect when they get there, and what you think a main takeaway would be from somebody who's thinking, hey, that sounds like a good idea, but how can it benefit me if I'm not a CEO or if I'm not somebody who, is in a leadership position right now?
Yeah, I think what to expect is it's going to be a first-class event. First and foremost, the Midland is an awesome venue. It's 2,000 people, so it's not huge, but it's going to be something where you're going to walk in, you're going to feel the energy, you're going to feel the encouragement. And if you're not in a leadership position, we believe that everyone's a leader. You're leading yourself, you're leading your family, You're leading at work, even if you don't know it. So everybody can get these tools to become a better leader. And that is really, as we kind of look at ourselves and say, hey, even if I'm a single person, I'm not leading anybody, I'm still leading myself every day. And what's really interesting, and you kind of hit on, you personally wanting to attend, kind of get it into these kind of things. Someone like Jesse Cole, for example, it wasn't too long ago that he was one of the people in these kind of settings, getting inspiration from others. And that's what we aim to do, is really inspire. And hopefully that light bulb clicks on something from one of our speakers. We obviously mentioned those that you did, but we have a fighter pilot duo, a man and a woman, talking on military leadership. We have a gentleman named Hal Elrod, who wrote a book called The Miracle Morning that I read and changed my life, about how you're setting up your morning that dictates your entire day. So there's really going to be something for everyone: sports fans, non-sports fans, leaders of huge organizations, or leaders of yourself. So I would say come with an open mind. You can go to leadercast.com and get your tickets. And it promises it'll definitely be worth it. The response has been amazing. I think people in Kansas City love this kind of thing, where we can gather as a community to get better and really thrive off that energy around, hey, how do we make ourselves better leaders?
Absolutely. Again, it's leadercast.com. It's April 8th here in Kansas City at the Midland Theater. Leadercast.com for more info. I will see you there. I will put a link in the description for both the audio, and if you're watching on YouTube of this podcast, you can click, you can read more about the different hosts and who is going to be there. You talk about different quotes and things. One of my favorite quotes is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so I try to find, and I am seeking out rooms to not be the smartest person and be far from it in that room on April 8th. So I'm excited to be there. Brian, I appreciate you for stopping by. We'll have more information between now and April 8th on the KC Sports Network channels regarding the LeaderCast event. But again, if you're out there, hope to see you there. And Brian, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, BJ.
We appreciate Brian Morris from LeaderCast joining us. Let's get into the final few things here on our 10 Things show. And first, nice transition. We're going to talk about Eagles fans now, because not that it was any better with the Bills or the Bengals or even the Ravens fans. And let's be honest, Chiefs fans are some that get after it and give the reputation that people don't like Chiefs fans as well, because of some people that get pretty mouthy defending their team, and with the disrespect we've seen, we understand it. It's the never ending cycle. But I will start off with saying one positive thing, and it's a very positive thing, that Saquon Barkley may have become my favorite non-Chiefs player in the NFL. Leading up to the Super Bowl, the stories about him, even going back to college, and just the person that he was, the way he treats people, that can't help him in any kind of way, that he's not benefiting from or expecting something from. He just treats people the right way for the sake of, that's what you do. You treat people the right way, you be a good person. But what we saw, after the Super Bowl, during the parade, just seems like a phenomenal dude, phenomenal ambassador for the NFL and for the Eagles organization. Their fans, some of the stuff they've done, not what they've said and not what they've tweeted, but some stuff that they've done. The picture I put on social media, like Patrick Allen from Fanside had put it out of them, like cooking a pig or whatever it was with like the Mahomes number on it. It's just weird, and I don't understand how we got to this point. I know some of this stuff would happen in the past. We saw Bills fans hanging the Kermit from the flag, and we've seen other Bills fans do other things artistically. And it's one thing to say things, another thing to tweet things, another thing to physically make food like that, or the Kermit thing like that, or some of the other pictures that we had seen regarding Mahomes or Kelsey or Taylor Swift. And we saw Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's shirt at the parade, just living rent free, whatever you want to call it. Hate talking about the stuff, but it's just, discourse has to be better. And I hope this isn't a sign of things to come, because it always just gets a little bit worse. If this is what it is now, what's it going to look like 2 years from now? What is social media going to have us looking like and talking to each other like then? And again, not saying that Chiefs fans, that we don't have our own. I mean, we idolized a criminal who threatened, stole, cheated people, intimidated people, to the point that people thought it'd be cool to sympathize with a guy dressed up like a wolf and went around to different games after robbing, scaring, intimidating, menacing people. Traveled around and wore a wolf costume, which is kind of weird anyway. I don't want to hate on it, but it's weird. But not that we don't have people to say some effed up stuff and obviously do some effed up stuff, but going back, this is where I'm going to side with players and coaches in a certain way because I've seen that side of it. But I remember Chiefs fans saying they hoped the plane would crash in my mentions after a loss when I was the team reporter. I was getting on the team plane. It was after the Pittsburgh game. A lot of it was after that Pittsburgh game. We just got throttled like 2 minutes into the game. We were down like 20-0. I think Alex Smith got hurt. I think Jamal got hurt and they had to put him back in at the end of the game. The press conference, I'll never forget for the rest of my life. But I only remember getting on and looking at my mentions after the game. And it's from somebody with a Twitter account with a Chiefs helmet, obviously a Chiefs fan, saying some of the most effed up stuff you could possibly think, and for players doing the same thing. That's where it goes back to the Anthony Hitchens comment that pissed everybody off about Chiefs fans being toxic. And they were at that time. They were 2-3 and everybody wanted everyone fired. Same thing now. If you're wanting Brett Veach fired, you're wanting Andy Reid fired, you want Joe Blaymire fired because of one comment out of context, not from the person who talked about it. It's crazy that we got to this point. And it's really hard for players and coaches to differentiate between fans that have avatars on social media where the Chiefs fan looks just like the next Chiefs fan who doesn't say those things, doesn't do those things. Hard for them to differentiate and to know what percentage of the fan base is like this person versus this person. And why can't they just be happy with where we are? Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls in a row, won the AFC again. First time in NFL history, a team after winning 2 Super Bowls in a row even made the playoffs, I believe, the next year, let alone getting all the way to the Super Bowl again. And then they don't play well, and we act like the team was 2-14, going back to what it was when I started writing about the team. Not saying you have to be happy about it and just not be bummed, but perspective matters. And it feels like there's a lot of people losing it. And I know from those comments that I used to read on my social media account when I worked there, perspective has been lost in a lot of ways. It was lost then, and it's only gotten worse in a lot of ways. And again, rivalries, trash talk, it's a part of sports. I've had this thought before, and people disagree with me. It's a lot of like stolen valor from athletes. You talk trash to people. If you're one of those people, you talk trash to people on social media, you prop yourself up with clout based on the actions of what these athletes are doing and what these guys that are wearing Chiefs jerseys do. You don't appreciate them when they don't do well, because then you don't get to trash talk and to have that stolen equity, that stolen valor from athlete. That's how I feel about it. And I think you respect what they do. You respect they get to entertain you for a while and represent the team that you root for. And I'm not telling people how to fan. I hope it doesn't come across like that, but understand that we're not the ones playing. Can't ever get too high, too low about something, and just appreciate where we're at in this era. We have the things that these are the good old days. These are still the good old days. That's just going to be a conversation about a game that we talk about. And I fully buy into the idea that, man, how is Patrick Mahomes going to respond to this game? What we have seen throughout his career and the way he's responded to things. There's no reason to believe that it won't happen again. So let's move on to the offseason. What do they do at receiver? What do they do with Hollywood Brown? Rashee Rice, what does the suspension look like? Is there a suspension? All of those questions. How much of the time is he going to miss? How does that play into free agency about bringing guys back? Hollywood makes all the sense in the world. What do they do at left tackle? Chance of getting a great left tackle in free agency that somebody else doesn't sign, or getting one at the very end of the draft, isn't likely. You can't bank on getting a starter, I think, in either one of those spots. DJ Humphries, I've had the report that he would be interested in coming back and having an entire offseason to fight for the left tackle. That makes a lot of sense. Not expensive. Spent some time here. He had some sort of soft tissue injury. Felt like he played very quickly once he got here and then never really got that chance again. But that makes sense. It's Kingsley. Is he staying at left tackle? Is he moving to guard? What does that look like? Or some sort of trade, some sort of big trade to bring in a left tackle. It's going to be interesting to see how they play that out and how they attack that position in different ways, because you can't count on the draft after free agency. So you got to bring somebody in. Again, Humphreys makes sense. And then what do you do in the draft? Knowing that you can't really count on anything. It's just best player available because you're picking so late in the draft. You don't know who's going to be there. So we will be at the combine. There'll be a group of us. Won't name everybody who's going to be there because there's some news coming up here, KCSN over the next week or so. But I'll have a group up there at the combine. It's a great place, obviously, to learn about the prospects, have a chance to talk to them. And then obviously the guys from KU, K-State, Mizzou are going to be there. We'll be covering that as well. But everybody in the NFL being in one place at one time also leads to a ton of conversations happening late at night over drinks. And that's how information gets out. That's why a lot of information will be leaked and a lot of reports of things coming out just because you get everybody together in one place. A lot of conversations are happening. A lot of information's flying around. That's why it's fun to be there and just kind of be around that environment and just see how it all works. So we'll have plenty of content for you coming up there. And then the last thing I would talk about, number 10, just talking about KC Sports Network. I know it could come across weird, them complaining about media and the way things are handled, and obviously help run a startup media network here. And our network here at KCSN is full of people who disagree about different things. You see our group texts, our DMs. There's very rarely things that we all agree on. I think that's beautiful. As long as don't disrespect anyone, as long as you're not disrespecting people, I don't get involved in that kind of thing. I don't expect everybody to agree. We don't have to agree. I think that's the beauty in all of it. I think it's beauty in having so many different shows and so many different personalities across our network that you're going to get every different perspective from people that are genuine in having that conversation and understanding different points of view on things that, let's be honest, when it comes to context, not going to get all of it. They don't feel, they as in the Chiefs and the NFL and players and coaches don't necessarily feel like having to explain themselves for everything all the time. That you can't put the toothpaste back in. They stop messing with it. There's no winning there, which I understand. But I won't knock anyone's hustle, but I'm proud of the way that KCSN has covered the Chiefs, the way we've done things and the way we've represented ourselves individually. And then as a whole, obviously relating back to KCSN. I spent years as an unpaid blogger covering the Chiefs, then got $100 a month to cover a bad team, and then got $300 a month when I added podcasts and videos, and then got to $1,000 a month when I went to Bleacher Report. They had a better infrastructure as a national columnist, national level, all these editors and all these resources to get better. I got a chance to go to the Chiefs and tell stories, learn about athletes on a different level. I went from being their internal reporter, writing long forms, starting the podcast network, all those different things, being surrounded by some of the best and most talented people in this industry. I've got a very unique perspective on how media works from every angle of sports media. It doesn't make me more right or more wrong, but you're hard pressed to find someone who's seen and worked in every different angle of sports media that I have. Outsider, insider, all access, no access, paid salary, not paid at all. I understand how this works. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing I've learned is how you treat people matters. Whether it's the people that work with you, you're working alongside, whether it's the people that you're talking to and creating the content for in your audience and being fair and respectful to them. And then obviously being fair and respectful to the people you're talking about. Doesn't mean it always has to be positive, but it can't be wrong and overly negative. That's hard to come back from if you cross lines. Not to be negative if somebody doesn't play well. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going beyond the things that we see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson doing on a much deeper level, or fire Joe Blameyer because of the word terror being used without any context to what Joe Blameyer has meant to the organization and to the people in that room and how they help. And understanding if you're going to talk about the Chiefs offense, it starts with Andy Reid, starts with Patrick Mahomes. Everybody's got a part in it, but at the end of the day, the buck stops there. So for me, again, it's how we treat people. It's right point of this podcast. Being good to people, being respectful to the audience and the kind of content you're creating and what you're putting out there in the world, because it does shape narratives. As I mentioned earlier, someone aggregating somebody else's report, aggregating 2 tweets and having the title of the article be how Joe Blameyer should get fired, written by somebody who's never met him, wasn't at that interview, doesn't know the context of the tweets, doesn't know the personality of the people tweeting, but yet has the power to put out an article that was viewed by 70,000 people that was completely disingenuous. That's the problem with social media. That's why I have so much more respect for the people that follow and support what we're doing here at KCSN. If you're listening at this point in the show, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for at least seeking out. We try to give both sides and a better form of content. Again, not knocking anyone else's hustle, but I'm proud of the way that we do things here. And I appreciate you for spending part of your day with us, listening, watching, supporting us here at KCSN. Like I said, we've got some fun news that we're going to announce over the next week. And so stick close to our social channels for that as we get ready for the combine. I know the guys have the draft guide coming up and they're super excited about that. Kent, Maddie, Craig, the whole draft guide crew have been cranking on this thing all college football season. This is not something that they start once the Chiefs season is over. They are into this from the very beginning and they do a phenomenal job with it. So make sure you check that out and get access to that with the KCSN Substack and Discord. If you aren't in there, there's one thing with the Discord. Guys have tried to do is create that community type feel that we used to have at AP back in the day. And I love doing this with those guys and the people that we have involved, even Matt Verderam, those guys that put stuff out that I would disagree with. I've known Matt. We've been doing this for 16 years. We were at Arrowhead Pride Together back in the day, as was Mr. Craig Stout. And a lot of the other, Patrick Allen, who we mentioned earlier. A lot of us known each other a long time. Chiefs fans, there are a lot of really good content creators that have been doing this for a long time. And now there are a lot of people that are aggregating content that you won't know. They might not even be Chiefs fans. I would be sitting somewhere else writing the articles that you're clicking on Facebook, that you're seeing across social media. And that may go viral for all the wrong reasons because people click on them and they're not based on a shred of truth or context or rational thought. So I'll get off my high horse now, stop complaining. But I did want to have this show and share my 2 cents since I hadn't talked since the Super Bowl. Appreciate you for hanging out. Let me know how much you disagree with me in the comments or on social media. I'll get in there and I will respond if you have things to say. And you can tell me why I'm wrong and I'll have that conversation with you. But appreciate you for watching, listening. We'll see you next time.